stories for bedtime
and car time and playtime.
And anytime you want to hear how much Jesus loves you in all this world.
Even little birds.
Hi, I'm Pastor Sarah at St. Paul Lutheran Church in Davenport, Iowa. Welcome to this podcast where we tell stories told just for kids and for kids at heart. Every week, we tell a story about Jesus from the Bible. And as you know, for these stories on this podcast, we need to bring our imaginations. We are going to imagine that there was a little bird in all of those Bible stories, a little bird who was friends with Jesus, a little bird who saw all the things that Jesus did and heard all the things that Jesus said. Last week, Little Bird was a part of a really enormous lunch party. Jesus took 5 loaves of bread and 2 fish that a boy shared, and Jesus multiplied it into enough food to feed 5,000 people. Amazing! Well, today we hear about a time Jesus spent with a much smaller crowd. So, settle into your chair, or your bed, or your car seat, and hear this week's story.
Little Bird and Jesus Teach on a Mountain.
One afternoon, Jesus and Little Bird were walking up the side of a mountain. They had just left a big crowd of people and were on their way to be with Jesus' closest friends and followers. As they walked, they could hear their friends laughing and talking through the trees. Jesus listened and said to Little Bird, "I finally have my flock, Little Bird. Aren't they amazing?" Little Bird sang in agreement. Jesus did have a pretty amazing flock, and it was nothing like the bird flocks she was used to. Birds tended to flock with birds just like them. Sparrows were with sparrows, and geese were with geese. But Jesus had the most eclectic flock. It started with those poor fishermen, but others joined the flock too. People who were rich and poor and fancy and outcasts. They were all so different. The only thing they had in common was their commitment to Jesus. Some people think there were just 12 male disciples, but the Bible talks about many more. The flock of people included women too, Susanna and Joanna and others, and of course, a little bird. As they walked up the mountain, Jesus said, "This flock of mine is pretty special, Little Bird. Today, I want to spend some time teaching them. I'm going to tell them the important things they need to know to be my people." So, when they reached the place up on the mountainside, Jesus had his beloved flock of friends sit down around him. Little Bird flew up on a branch. They all got very quiet and turned to Jesus, ready for their special lesson. Jesus looked at them with such love and affection and said to them, "Blessed are you when you have nothing. Blessed are you when you are sad. Blessed are you when you try to do the right thing. Blessed are you when you care for others. Blessed are you when you make peace. Blessed are you when you are bullied." Little Bird listened and thought about how upside down all of this was. Usually people thought being blessed was about being lucky and having all kinds of stuff. But Jesus was saying that being blessed was not about luck, but about the promise of God's love and God's goodness with us, especially when things were hard. Jesus went on, and he said, You are the salt of the earth, and you are the light of the world. So let your light shine before others." As Jesus kept talking, Little Bird thought about salt and light. Little Bird thought about how even a little bit of salt made food taste better, and how people can act in ways, even small ways, that help us see goodness and experience God more clearly. She remembered being lost when it was dark outside, and how just a little bit of light helped her find her way and not be so afraid. People can be like that, she thought, helping others be less afraid, bringing joy and hope just by being with others, showing up for them. Little Bird realized that she had missed a bunch of Jesus' words while she was thinking about salt and light, so she started to focus again as Jesus said, "If someone hurts you, don't hurt them back. If someone asks for help, give it and more. Share what you have." Some people say, love your friends and hate your enemies. But I say, love your enemies and pray for those who hurt you. Little Bird watched as Jesus' friends wrinkled their foreheads as they thought about this. This was a hard teaching. It wasn't easy to be the person who walks away from a fight, to be kind to others, especially people who aren't kind first. But Little Bird knew that this was the kind of living that was the only way for God's dream of love to be known in the world, by people doing hard stuff and loving even when it wasn't easy. Then Jesus started talking about prayer, and that there's no fancy or special way to pray, that we just talk with God, and we can trust that God is always there, listening and loving us. As Jesus talked, Little Bird was starting to get a little restless. They'd all been sitting for a long time, and, well, a little bird can only sit still for so long. So when Jesus paused for a little bit, Little Bird hopped off her branch and flew around as quietly as she could, stretching her wings, getting all of her wiggles out. Jesus stopped talking to watch Little Bird. She flew out all of her wiggles and then landed quietly next to Jesus as he smiled kindly at her. But then he grinned, like he had been inspired. And he said, "Don't worry too much about this life of yours. Don't fuss or fret about what you wear or what you'll eat or how much stuff you have or if it's the right stuff. God will take care of you. Just look at the birds. Little Bird has taught me about trust and joy, about not being concerned about tomorrow. Watch those birds, and they'll remind you of God's care that never stops." Little Bird was so pleased by this, but also a little embarrassed. So she flew and she hid timidly behind a big clump of bright purple lilies. Jesus grinned and turned to say to his friends, "Just look at the lilies. See how beautiful they are. Do they try to be a daisy or a rose or something other than what they are? Do they think that they aren't pretty enough? Of course not. The most gorgeous, fancy people in the world are shabby in comparison to those flowers. So don't worry too much. God will take care of you." Little Bird hopped out from behind the lilies and flew to Jesus, who caught her in the palm of his hand. Little Bird and the rest of Jesus' flock learned a lot on the side of the mountain that day. Nestled in his hands, Little Bird knew that every one of Jesus' teachings pointed to the same truth, that God loved this world so much. Jesus wanted his followers to share that love through their words and through their actions. And Little Bird knew that Jesus would do everything he could to share that love with everyone, too. There was a lot to learn from Jesus today, wasn't there? We often call this time Jesus had with his followers the Sermon on the Mount. Which one of those little lessons stuck with you? The one about blessings, or salt and light, or loving our enemies? Next time you eat something salty, or enjoy the brightness of a nightlight, think about Jesus and his words for you to be like salt or light. Or when you are bickering with a sibling or a friend, you can remember Jesus' words to walk away from a fight and to love. Do you ever worry or fret about things? I do. And one of the things that helps me when I am stuck in my worrying is to go outside. I go out and I try to find some birds or to look at the trees. There aren't many flowers right now in Iowa in the winter. There's something about being outside that takes away worry's power. It helps me remember that I'm part of something bigger than myself and my worry. So if you are worried this week, or you need a break from those siblings, or you just need to remember God and God's love for you, go outside. Look at the birds. It might not be Little Bird, but they can still tell you about God and God's love. And that's the end of this episode of Little Bird and Jesus.
Now flap your little wings. Sing a little song.
And remember that to Jesus,
You will always belong.
Thanks for listening to Little Bird and Jesus, a podcast of St. Paul Lutheran Church in Davenport, Iowa. For more information on St. Paul, visit us at stpaulqc.org. Come visit us again next week as Little Bird continues her journey.